Europe, 732 AD. The world trembled beneath the banners of the Umayyad Caliphate, conquerors of empires, rulers of deserts, and masters of war. Their armies had swept across North Africa, crushed the Visigoths, and burned their way into the heart of Gaul. No one believed they could be stopped. Not after the fall of Spain, not after the fall of Narbonne. But then came one man and 30,000 Franks who stood between Islam's unstoppable tide and the birth of Christian Europe. This is the forgotten story of Charles Martel, the hammer of the Franks, and the battle that decided the fate of a continent. The 8th century was an age of fire and faith. The Umayyad Caliphate, stretching from Persia to the Atlantic, sought to bring all lands under one banner, the banner of Islam. Their generals spoke of destiny, their soldiers of jihad, and their caliphs of divine mission. To them, Europe was the final frontier, the land yet unbowed. Across the Strait of Gibraltar, the Visigothic kingdom of Spain fell in mere years, its kings crushed, its cities conquered. By 720, Muslim cavalry patrolled the Pyrenees, their scouts whispering of the riches of Gaul. The dream of a new conquest, the conquest of all Europe, began to burn, and at its edge stood a fractured land, ruled by tribes, divided by faith, waiting for its savior to rise. In the Frankish realms, chaos reigned. The Merovingian kings were kings in name only, puppets of court intrigue and noble greed. But from the shadows of the royal court emerged a warrior, Charles, son of Pepin of Herstal, a bastard child with the heart of a lion. He was no king, yet his sword commanded more respect than any crown. Charles rebuilt the Frankish army, not of noble knights, but of disciplined men who fought for their homeland. He trained them not for glory, but for survival, turning peasants into soldiers and tribes into a nation. By the time the Umayyad armies crossed into Gaul, the Franks had found their hammer. In 732, Abdul Rahman al-Ghafiqi, the governor of Al-Andalus, led an army northward, an army of 80,000 men hardened by years of conquest. They swept through Aquitaine like a storm, burning churches, taking cities, and leaving silence in their wake. The Duke of Aquitaine, Odo the Great, met them in battle near Bordeaux and was utterly crushed. His army annihilated, his cities looted. Odo fled north to beg Charles for aid. The crescent banners flew over southern Gaul, and the road to Tours, the gateway to northern Europe, lay open. But Charles saw what others could not. This was not a raid. It was an invasion. Charles Martel gathered his nobles, his soldiers, and his faith. He knew that the fate of Christendom rested on this moment. One mistake, and Europe would fall. He called men from every tribe and every corner of his fractured land, Burgundians, Frisians, Alemanni, and loyal Franks. They came not for gold or glory, but for their homes, their families, their faith. Charles promised them no riches, only the chance to defend what was theirs. 30,000 men answered his call, standing against an enemy 3 times their number. Charles knew the strength of the Umayyads lay in their speed and their cavalry. To meet them in open ground would be suicide. So he chose the hills near Tours, where forests broke the enemy's charge. For days he waited, his army silent, unmoving, disciplined. When the Muslim scouts rode close, they saw not fear but patience, the calm before a storm. Charles built his formation like a wall, shield to shield, spear to spear, a living fortress. And across the plain, Abdul Rahman's men gathered, eager for another easy victory. The air cracked with the sound of war cries as the Umayyad cavalry charged. Hooves thundered across the plain, dust rising like smoke from a furnace. They expected to break the Franks in moments, but the wall held. Frankish shields locked, spears thrust, and horses crashed into an unyielding line of iron. The first wave shattered, the second faltered, the third began to doubt. And for the first time in decades, the invincible armies of Islam met an enemy that did not run. The battle raged from dawn to dusk, and still neither side yielded. The Umayyads tried to break through with speed and cunning, but the Frankish wall refused to die. When darkness fell, the dead lay in heaps across the field, men of every faith and tongue. Charles refused to sleep, walking among his men, whispering words of courage. The Franks stood in silence, their breath misting in the cold night air. In the distance, the cries of wounded horses echoed like ghosts. At dawn, Abdul Rahman launched his final assault, a desperate, furious charge meant to crush the Frankish center. Charles gave no orders to advance, no calls to chase glory. He waited. Then, when the Muslim lines overextended, he unleashed his hidden reserves. The Franks counterattacked with the fury of men who had nothing left to lose. Abdul Rahman was struck down in the chaos, his death rippling through his ranks like a shockwave. The Umayyad line broke. The invincible tide began to retreat. When morning came, the battlefield was silent, a sea of armor, blood, and shattered faith. The Franks stood victorious, their numbers thinned but their spirit unbroken. The Umayyad survivors fled south, abandoning their loot, their dead, and their dreams of Europe. Charles ordered no pursuit. He knew victory was already his. The hammer had struck, and the anvil of Europe held firm. For the first time in centuries, the Islamic advance had been stopped. News of the victory spread across Christendom like divine fire. Monks recorded it as a miracle. Kings called Charles the defender of the faith, but Charles saw it not as divine glory, only duty fulfilled. He returned to his lands quietly, rebuilding the realm that would one day become France. His discipline and vision would shape a dynasty, the Carolingians, that birthed Charlemagne. The hammer had not only saved Europe, he had forged its future. The Umayyad Caliphate continued to rule Spain, but the dream of conquering all of Europe died at Tours. Their generals blamed the terrain, the weather, the loss of their leader, anything but defeat. But deep down, they knew something had changed. The Franks had proven that faith and discipline could stand against even the mightiest empire. Spain remained Muslim for centuries, but Europe stayed free. And in the mosques of Cordoba, whispers of the battle that should have been won lingered. Most of Charles's soldiers were never named in history. Farmers, woodcutters, smiths, men who left their fields to defend their faith. Their armor was crude, their weapons heavy, but their courage unbreakable. They stood shoulder to shoulder, not for kings or crowns, but for the soil beneath their feet. They were Europe's shield, forged in the fire of desperation. And though history remembers Charles, it was their hands that held the line. For centuries, the Battle of Tours became legend, a clash of civilizations, a holy war, a miracle of faith. But historians see it differently. It was not a war of religions, but of power, survival, and destiny. Charles did not fight to destroy Islam. He fought to preserve his people. And Abdul Rahman did not march for faith alone, but for empire and ambition. The battle was not about God, but about men who believed in something worth dying for. It was not a miracle. It was willpower made flesh. After Tours, Europe began to change. The Franks grew stronger, their unity solidified under Charles as heirs. The Carolingian Empire rose, and with it, the foundations of medieval Europe. The idea of Christendom, a united European identity, was born in blood and faith. Charles Martel became the symbol of resistance, discipline, and divine destiny. His hammer echoes still in every tale of courage that defines the West. History forgets many battles, but not this one. The Battle of Tours was not just a victory. It was a moment when history chose a direction. Had the Franks fallen, Europe might have spoken Arabic, prayed east, and followed different laws. But 30,000 men stood their ground, and history turned on their courage. The winds of conquest broke against the stone of will, and in that storm a civilization was born. So when we speak of the hammer of the Franks, we speak of more than a man. We speak of a moment when destiny itself paused, held back by faith, courage, and steel. 30,000 men stood against an empire, and in doing so, shaped the future of the world. The Battle of Tours reminds us, sometimes history changes not by the many, but by the few who refuse to fall. And in that defiance, Europe found its soul.